He's saying that even if you've lusted in your heart or you've created content that causes other people to lust in your heart, that it's the same as adultery. That's what he's saying. So he's saying the standard is so much higher than any of us can be. That's why I think this whole like, she's bad because she did this, but Adam had 300 bodies. Like, I think we're all jacked up.
It's evident that she hasn't really thought out her worldview critically a ton. The fact that she said Jesus and Spirit Guide. Should Christians and Christian content creators go into spaces with people who are very not Christian, talking about very worldly things, and try to engage in conversation with them?
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Things You Don't Hear in Church podcast. My name is Ethan.
And my name is Derry. And guys, we have social media everywhere. It's all over the place. We have a lot of it, and you can go look at it. And not just listening to the podcast, you can also see it everywhere. YouTube, places. You can see clips of it. You can see special clips we make on extra content, on TikTok, all that kind of stuff. YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. You know the drill. Yeah.
Yeah. Today on the episode, on the podcast, we are talking about should Christians and Christian content creators go into spaces with people who are very not Christian, talking about very worldly things, and try to engage in conversation with them.
Yeah.
You know, should we intentionally put ourselves in situations where we're in these conversations with people who live maybe morally compromising lives and stuff like that? Because there has been a Christian content creator who actually Derry and I are fans of, named Ruslan, who went on the Whatever podcast. And he went on, and there was a lot of people who were on that as well. If you don't know what the Whatever podcast is, they call themselves a dating podcast. I've never really watched an episode until I saw Ruslan go on there, and I didn't even listen to the whole episode because it was so drenched in just disgusting topics that I didn't want to listen to, with like adult film stars talking about their work and talking about it very openly. And Ruslan was actually sitting down at the table with them and trying to bring the gospel, trying to bring light to people. And a lot of people
did not like it.
A lot of people didn't like it because they're saying Christians shouldn't be there. What are you doing? And so he's made a couple of response videos we thought it'd be fun to talk about as well. But if you have noticed, before we get into that content, we are using a camera to film this, not my iPhone. I
finally have a camera.
I finally can have my iPhone back and play Sudoku when we are podcasting. Because that's what I like to do with my time. We also got these cool new mics. Shout out to F Deuce or Fadouche. I don't know how you guys pronounce your brand name, but yeah, it's exciting. So we're experimenting, trying to get the color grading right. We dropped the lights, maybe thinking of bringing a more serious element, possibly, and just in the process, you guys are witnessing it. But we're super thankful for you guys' support financially and coming back and listening to stuff. Yeah, we're excited. We got all this. I think the sound is better.
Yeah. I think it sounds great. I mean, we've had so many problems in the last year. I guess the whole time we've had the podcast with mostly mic stuff, but video stuff as well. We've had to re-record so many episodes due to audio stuff, video stuff. There's always just some kind of problem, and it feels bad because as like a podcast has been going for like 3+ years, we have almost 200 episodes. It's so weird to like have just a whole bunch of great episodes, tons of views, lots of engagement, and then just like the next episode you make is just like terrible quality, and you feel like a novice, and you feel like you've never done this before, and you feel like you have to put out this content because it's that or you don't have an episode this week, and it just doesn't look good at all, and like it looks like I'm a beginner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's nice to finally have like, hopefully, and just watch this episode not be good or something, but it's nice to have like good quality audio, video, all that kind of stuff. It'd be hilarious if like the audio is off right now.
Oh, I know, right?
And all that stuff, that would suck.
If you can't tell, we don't use in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
And
we're going to start, but we don't have them right now.
But even if I did, I would be like listening to a lag of everything that's happening. And so we need like a third party to kind of monitor all that stuff. But
I think if you have in-ear monitors, there's no lag.
Well, I'm saying if I did it from OBS straight to my ears and hearing OBS hears, it's a little bit different. If we did in-ear monitors to hear each other or ourselves, that'd be different. But yeah, it feels like... Because we don't podcast full time. You know, we're not full time podcasters. We work at another Christian ministry, and we have full time jobs and a whole social life that we're trying to sustain.
And I go to school.
And you go to school and married life and stuff like that. So we're just like, we put all the effort we can into it to be like holistic. And so it's taken a little bit to get here, but we're here and we're excited.
Yep.
But yeah, so we have queued up this video of Ruslan talking about what he did and what he said. It's a 15-minute video. We're going to watch snippets of it. I don't know if there's any laws against this. I feel like
there's not, as long as you're adding the content and you're not playing the whole thing, you're fine.
Yeah, we're not playing the whole thing.
Yeah.
But also, Ruslan, if you catch us, we really appreciate you.
Yeah.
We think you're awesome. So.
Yep.
Don't tell us to take this down. Here we go. Ads. Because I don't have YouTube Premium.
Recently, I had the opportunity to go on the Whatever podcast to discuss the net positive or net negatives of pornography with Adam22 and his wife, Lena.
Is there a way
well,
to censor that word?
I was encountered by something way more intriguing. A self-professed conservative Christian
Corn.
OnlyFans model? Correct. And oddly enough, me and Adam22 were actually agreeing on more than he was agreeing with her on.
And I think comparing porn to drugs totally makes sense because it's like...
And found ourselves confronting her.
Yeah.
Just wanted to play that intro. Want to play that intro because so you can hear him talk about all that he's doing. So
the purpose
7
of the
deadly sins have an impact on dating. Lust.
So you just asked, do the 7 deadly sins have an impact on dating?
Yeah, and for context, this podcast is like 4 hours long, and this is just like a 15-minute clip from it.
Yeah, and I'm not listening to 4 hours of that. Yeah. I tried listening to like 20 minutes, and I was like, this is terrible. My soul feels like
it's him. It's him. One other Christian.
And
Christian,
then a
whole bunch of
conservative commentator.
Yeah.
And Ruslan are the only Christians there, and everyone else is like CornStars.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if this guy is the host.
Yeah.
Greed, envy, sloth, pride, wrath, gluttony.
Of course they have an impact on dating, but I think the deeper issue is the one underneath the surface, which Christy is kind of hinting at, is that we have an entire society that's upside down, and we're wondering why people are getting divorced more likely, why there's more self-deletion, why all these things are happening in school with the Transformers. We're seeing all this stuff proliferate, and it's like, where is this coming from? As society gets more and more secular and removes God from everything, all of a sudden things go bad. All of a sudden there's more STDs, there's more STIs, there's more deletion of babies. All of these things are connected. So those are just the manifestation of said things. But I would also go back to something.
I like that point that when you get away from the commands of God, everything goes worse. You know, they asked, are the 7 deadly sins, like, do those affect dating? And if it's not clear, it's like, yes. And like Ruslan made the point, right? Like, you have all these problems when you don't follow God's plan. If you're sleeping around outside of marriage and fooling around with people, you're gonna have a lot more problems.
Yeah.
You know,
it's funny. Like, you can tell how awkward it is for everybody else there because, like, no one agrees with him because they all don't have that worldview. They're all like, these are not problems. Like, deletion of babies, not a problem. Like, sleeping around, not a problem. Like, all of that stuff's not a problem for them. And so they're like, this is weird that you're thinking this is a problem.
Right. We're going to skip a little bit ahead because I want to get to what the models say.
I don't think God doesn't like me. There's so many things in my life that I know God is with me every single day of my life, and so are all my spirit guides.
I think God loves you so much.
Right there. She said, I think God is with me every single day, and so are my spirit guides.
Yeah.
Ruslan didn't hit on that. You're going to see. He didn't call that out, which I don't blame him for.
Yeah.
Maybe some people would be mad at him, like, oh, why didn't you call that out? I mean, when you're having these conversations with people, you got to, like, pick your battles.
You got to pick your battles, absolutely. 100%. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, if you guys have ever talked to your coworkers or maybe your friends who aren't Christians and they say crazy outlandish things, you're probably going to be like, I'm not going to address that. We're going to talk about, like, she's an OnlyFans model who uses her body to make money, and her thinking about spirit guides is probably not the first thing. The first thing that's in order of importance.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
she's the, like, conservative Christian, like, claiming those things on the podcast. He's talking to her. Everyone else is not like that.
Yeah. Well, she claims to be conservative and Christian, and whatnot, but
she's Catholic.
Yeah. Well, also it's like I feel kind of bad for her because it seems like it's evident that she hasn't really thought out her worldview critically a ton. The fact that she said Jesus and spirit guides, unless maybe she has thought it out with just some bad information.
Right.
But yeah.
That it's this sort of love where he accepts you right where you are, but desires so much more for you. I think it's the way that Adam loves his daughter. It's such a love where I love you right where you're at, even when you have a poopy diaper, even when you're making a mess of your house. But yet I want more for you, and that love is.
But that you have to trust that the universe will give you what you need, and everything will happen to you when you need it.
Which
one of the commandments have I broken?
So can I read you a verse?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. This is Jesus speaking. It's in red. He says, "You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." So Jesus is saying, society says adultery is wrong. You guys have heard it said in the law.
I've never committed. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
And he's saying that.
She says she's never committed adultery.
I mean, she's not married, she hasn't, but yeah.
No, but if you commit lust in your heart, you commit adultery, is what Jesus says.
Yeah, but adultery still is only like cheating on somebody.
No, Jesus says if you lust in your heart, you commit adultery.
We can talk about it another time, but I don't agree.
But you're disagreeing with Jesus.
No, I'm not. Lusting in your heart in the context of marriage is adultery.
No, lusting in your heart, period, is adultery. Jesus wasn't talking to, he didn't say, if you're married, this.
No, I think he is. That's always my interpretation of that.
It's always wrong.
Okay. There's lots of other places where, like, Paul condemns people for sleeping around outside of marriage, but adultery only means within marriage.
I don't know, man.
That's the definition of adultery.
No, but Jesus redefines it. That's why Jesus said, "You've heard it said," and then he redefines it.
Can you play the clip again?
Yeah. I'll back it up a little bit.
He says, "You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her."
The point is not
so
about
saying,
sex outside of marriage. The point is about if you actually do this act, like in a marriage, you're actually committing adultery. But if you're in marriage and you even lust, you're still committing adultery. That's the point of it. It's not redefining it to being anyone who lusts. It's lust within the context of marriage.
Oh, I don't know, man. I think how I hear that is Jesus saying, "You've heard it said, anyone who commits adultery cheats on his wife, right? But I tell you, if you even look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery." And he's not. I don't think there's a disclaimer.
The context is adultery.
No. He's saying, "Here's what you've heard adultery is. I'm redefining it." So he drops the "you need to be married" part.
No, he doesn't. He redefines it as a lust in the mind, not as an action a human does. In the physical.
Which means if you're single, you can lust.
Oh, I totally agree.
You're committing adultery.
I just don't think that's what this passage is about.
That's why we tell people when we evangelize if they're being prideful, we say, "Have you ever lusted? You commit yourself. You said you're an adulterer."
I agree, but we get that from other places, not from that verse. I don't think.
I don't know. Anyways, that's besides the point.
No, we need to stay on this. I'm looking it up.
Are you looking it up?
What's the verse?
I think he said Matthew 7. Here, let's go back again.
We'll give you what you need, and everything will happen to you when you need it. Which one of the commandments have I broken?
So can I read you a verse?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. This is Jesus.
5:27.
He says
5:27.
Well, I love that Blue Letter Bible does a page turn when you flip.
Do look at some commentaries. We had no idea we were gonna discuss what adultery is.
Ooh.
But this is the fun of it. We get to explore and see different ideas and hear each other out.
Whoa, it's in bold in the Blue Letter Bible. I've never seen that before.
In bold.
Yeah.
Like what Jesus says.
Everything is normal, and then it says,
not
you shall commit adultery.
Oh, maybe because it's a reference to the Old Testament.
Possibly.
I wish we could do this for you guys online. Like, you can see the whole process. But yeah. Well, looking it up. Do you see anything?
Yeah, all the definitions are just adultery. Like, it says commit adultery with and have unlawful intercourse with another person's wife. To have a wife and suffer adultery, to be detached.
And what are you looking at specifically? Because you guys...
I'm just looking at the biblical outlines of usage in the Blue Letter Bible.
Look up commentaries and see like the Matthew Henry commentary.
Greek lexicon. I'm just scrolling.
Matthew Henry commentary is good. Oh, I have my phone now. I can do this too.
You can do it too.
I'm used to my phone recording everything. Like, we're going to disconnect that. Oh my gosh, guys. Game changer. I can use my phone on the podcast now. I'm going to go to Matthew 5:27. Because I just don't know how you would take what Jesus says and say it's not what Jesus says. But I say to you that everyone, not just married people, everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in her heart. So it says everyone, right? I think this is the Matthew Henry commentary. Says, victory over the desires of your heart must be attended with painful exertion, but it must be done. Everything is bestowed to save us from our sins, not in them. All our senses and powers must be kept from those things which lead to transgression. Those who lead others into temptation to sin by dress or in other ways, or leave them in it, or expose them to it, make themselves guilty of their sin and will be accountable for it. If painful operations are submitted to, then our lives may be saved. What ought our minds to shrink from when salvation of our souls is concerned? This is like Old English type stuff. There is tender mercy under the divine requirements, and the grace and consolation of the Spirit will enable. All right, sorry about that. Our battery died, so we replaced it, buying a dummy battery. But
we had a whole hour-long conversation.
Yeah, we had a whole hour.
Just like we said at the beginning of the podcast, something was going to go wrong.
Yeah, no, that was only like a 5-minute ordeal. But I don't know necessarily where we left off, but we're talking about what does Jesus mean by abortion, because apparently
Adultery.
Darren and I disagree.
Adultery.
I say abortion.
You said abortion, yeah. Different.
Very different. Adultery.
Very different.
Very, very different. Holy cow.
I don't have any scholars just because I don't have time to look it up, but every definition of every website I'm looking it up all just says there's only 2 types of adultery. One is like between 2 married people, and one is between an unmarried person and a married person.
But why does Jesus say everyone?
Because he says it's the context of adultery that's important, because adultery is the action which is done between someone who's married. Sexual immorality, which is like porneia, which is also defined later on, that like precludes, I think, all like sexual immorality outside of marriage as well. Pretty clear biblically. So no matter what, it doesn't matter. But I don't think that this time Jesus is speaking, he's talking about like people outside of
I don't know,
salvation.
Dude, because then you have to apply that to be marriage. Like, oh no, being angry is not murder. Killing someone's murder. But Jesus says if you're angry with someone in your heart, you murder. He says, you shall not commit murder.
The problem is
murder,
not with the definition.
No, but it says whoever commits murder shall be liable to the courts. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. And whoever says to your brother, you're good for nothing, shall be guilty before the Supreme Court.
Everyone who is angry, so everyone that does this action is guilty of this thing.
Is angry.
So everyone who is guilty of adultery is also guilty of adultery if they do it in their mind, is what he's saying. And you can't commit adultery unless you're doing it, unless you're married or the person doing it is married.
I think it's like if you're angry, you're guilty of murder, and if you lust after someone, you commit adultery.
I think if you lust after someone, you do commit or you don't commit adultery. You can. That's what it says. You can sexually sin towards them, but it says if you're married, because
it does not say if you're married.
You can't if you find me one biblical.
Show me in the Bible where it says if you're married.
It's adultery.
No, show me in that verse where it says.
The only definition of adultery is someone who's married. The only definition.
But Jesus redefines it. That's the whole thing.
No, he doesn't.
He says, "But I tell you." That's a redefinition.
Everyone who is married so someone who is committing adultery, because you have to be married to commit adultery, and if they lust in their mind, then they commit adultery, or then they have sexual sin.
Let's ask Christian ChatGPT.
Our next episode. But yeah, if you go to Bible Keeper, if you go to Wikipedia, if you go to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, all of these top websites all say the definition is just between someone who's married and unmarried person, or 2 married people that are sleeping with each other who aren't married to each other.
So you think any single person who is lusting is not committing adultery?
No, that's not what I said. I think other places in the Bible, it clearly defines what is like sexual sin, but in this instance, I don't think Jesus is saying that, because adultery, unless you find some other place in the Bible where they use that definition of adultery, it doesn't seem clear from the context that Jesus is saying, oh, just everybody is now like sinning against their spouse, because that's what adultery is sinning against the spouse.
Bro, I don't know. I mean, I hear what you're saying, because I understand what you're saying. Like, because they're not married and adultery has to do with marriage, it doesn't count. But Jesus says, for everyone, that's anyone
who is married.
But he doesn't say that. He says everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery.
Yeah, anyone. So anyone, and in the context is that you're committing adultery, so you would have to be married.
No, because you can lust after someone who's not your wife, whether you're single or not. If you're not,
I totally agree.
If you're single, every girl and guy is not your wife, and you can lust after them, and they're going to be someone's husband or wife eventually. So you're like, or especially if you lust after a married person, you're committing adultery.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the definition of adultery.
But I don't know. I think it's just all lust. Married. I've always assumed it's just all lust. Either way, all lust is sin.
For sure, yeah. No matter what, the application of the Bible doesn't change. But I think that this verse is just talking about married people, or someone who's married and not married.
Maybe. You guys let us know what you think in the comments. That's a huge tangent that we took.
Yeah, maybe I just haven't ever studied it enough, but that's always been my opinion.
This is how Derry and I are in our real life, actually, with our friendship.
There's plenty of places in the Bible where it denounces any kind of sexual immorality like that, right? Porneia is like even like the smallest hint of sexual immorality, right? So clearly outlawed. But so like I wouldn't be like, by saying this, I wouldn't be trying to say I can lust and it's free, right?
Right.
I just think the context is still marriage. But anyways, we can. She makes that point because she's like, well, I'm not married.
Yeah, she said she's never committed adultery.
Yeah, because she's not married.
Now the question is, are you guilty of the sin if you lead someone? It's like a drug dealer saying, "I never did drugs, so I'm not guilty of them." It's like, yeah, but you gave the dude drugs. You're kind of culpable.
Yeah.
Morally, but yeah, let's keep it going.
He says, you have heard that it was said you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So Jesus is saying, society says adultery is wrong. You guys have heard it said in the law.
I've never committed. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
And he's saying that it's way worse than that. He's saying that even if you've lusted in your heart or you created content that causes other people to lust in your heart, that it's the same as adultery. That's what he's saying. So he's saying the standard is so much higher than any of us can admit. That's why I think this whole like, she's bad because she did this, but Adam had 300 bodies. Like, I think we're all jacked up. We all need grace and we all need mercy. And that's the point of the gospel. That's the point of the good news, is that Jesus is saying you can't do it on your own. You're incapable. That's why you need Jesus.
That's not what I get from that at all. It's saying that if a man, I'm saying what.
Even before that, he's trying to point out to her, and she's just not getting the point. He's trying to point out that, hey, you say you're a Christian and that you've been saved by grace. She's like, yeah. And he doesn't say that exactly, but paraphrasing. And then he's like, just like Adam loves his son, like he wants his son or his daughter to be better than they are now, but he loves them and helps them to do that. In the same way, Christ loves you, and because you love him and you say that you're a Christian, he's calling you to a higher standard. And he gives her the higher standard of like, you making this content is causing married people to stumble, or not causing, like married people are going to go and lust after you. Like most likely, not everyone is single that's watching her, and so you are committing adultery by doing that. And so, yeah, interesting. And so she's like, I don't see it that way, which is just very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how she doesn't see it that way.
Well, people aren't going to see it that way because.
But logically, it's the only way.
Depravity.
It's the only way it follows.
Well, I just think,
like it's the logical conclusion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people who are dead in their sins and dead in their trespasses, right? That's like.
But people who are dead in their trespasses are still logical people.
Yeah, they know that murder's wrong.
Yeah, but she just isn't getting it. It's not.
Maybe she doesn't allow herself to know that, because then she has to change her lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, that's the case with a lot of people, is that they know what they're doing is wrong. They won't admit it. They'll actually say the opposite, because if they know if they admit it, then they have to change. They don't want to be accountable to that. And real quick, praise report, man. These microphones, we're able to have fans in here blowing, and they don't get picked up that like pretty minutely. For really quiet, you can probably hear them, but man, it's so much cooler in here. I love it. Okay, let's continue watching this.
Saying what it says too. If a man lusts elsewhere, that's when he's doing wrong.
Right. So
I'm not doing
after you who are
wrong.
married.
Men would lust after me, whether I was a lawyer or I was a real estate agent, just because of how I look. That has nothing to do with me.
But could you run your business?
Sorry that God made me look this way. God made me look like this.
That
has nothing to do with.
It's like when people say like, hey man, you shouldn't like beat people up. And they're like, sorry, God made me angry. It's like, well, I don't know. No.
A little different, but
a little bit different. Yeah. But to excuse immoral behavior under the guise of this is how I am.
I think it'd be logical if she was just saying, hey, I'm hot. Like, I'm hot. Like if guys lust after me, it's not my problem. But as soon as you start saying, I make corn videos, and then you're like, oh, like that is not you being hot. That's you like actually like putting out sexual content.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Different.
Yeah. Very different.
Yeah.
Not same. I want to skip ahead for a little bit.
Yeah. Do it.
Don't know exactly where. We'll try this. I know toward the end some good stuff happened.
What if you could make up to $200 an hour?
What if I can make up to $200 an hour? All right.
And it's everywhere. It's in advertisements. It's in movies. It's everywhere. Looking at or making is a sin is because of lust, and you're either.
I'm not in.
Let me just finish really quick. And you're either intentionally creating content to get someone to and lust, or you are doing them and lusting.
They're already doing that.
The reality is, like the design, like God's design, is for unity and procreation. It's for unity between two people to be emotionally bonded, pair bonded, in love, connected, and then in addition to be able to bring life into the world, because can do that. And one of the reasons, Ruslan kind of mentioned this earlier a little bit, but one of the reasons the statistic hasn't been shared at this table, but there's 2,500 a day in this country, and so people get pregnant because they're having sex when they're not committed, and then they choose a. So it leads to all these other problems.
That's not what I'm doing at all.
Yeah.
Is a sin the way is drugs. The cocoa leaf is not a drug. They use the cocoa leaf in South America. You can make tea with it. The moment you take it and you add all the gasoline and all the other junk to make it cocaine, that's the moment it becomes a sin.
And I think comparing to drugs totally makes sense, because it's like, I've been able to be a person.
I like that he bleeped the first use of cocaine and then
use it again. There's so many like bleeps that aren't bleeped different places here. It's awesome. Also, like he says corn, like the full word at the beginning when he's introing it, and he says corn in the podcast.
Yeah.
a person throughout most of my life where I could have a couple drinks and I just don't have this like strained relationship with alcohol. I've also gone through periods of time where I was getting drunk every weekend and it was clearly having a very negative impact on my.
So for context, this guy is married to the girl in the pink on his right, and they make corn videos together. And so that's a big controversy. It's like, how's that
and with
good?
other people, don't you?
Yeah, and with the other, so it's like, how is that good for your marriage? How is this something that's beneficial?
Life, and I have friends who've died or ended up in the hospital and stuff from doing drugs. Myself, in my life is something that I've never really struggled with in any way. I've always had this like completely kind of take it or leave it attitude. I never like yearned to be seeing it when I didn't have access to it or anything like that. But I have known people throughout my life who clearly had some kind of weird relationship with where they needed to see it on some kind of consistent basis. So it is hard for me to imagine somebody having that sort of like unhealthy relationship with it. But I smoke weed. I know people who've basically kind of ruined their life because of smoking weed. I know people who've ruined their life because of alcohol.
Of this acceptance in a marriage.
If it's good enough, whether it's coke or it's like it has the potential to take over somebody's life. Myself personally, I don't really see that as being something that's so common.
What Lila said was this beautiful picture of this acceptance in a marriage and also desiring to take care of yourself for your partner, to serve your partner, right? And I've been with my wife 15 years. We've both been overweight. I've been obese. She's had kids. We're in better shape now. We're lean. It's something that's a value of ours. My question would just simply be, it seems like we've all tried all of these things. We've tried all of these ideologies and all these.
This is where Ruslan's starting to make really good points.
Yeah, and it's so funny how like
piece
how
together being a
it is
conservative
for everyone else.
Right.
At the same time. I know I said this already before, and you can see what's the guy's name?
I don't know.
Adam.
Adam 22.
Yeah, you see Adam. He's like he's trying to be a part of it. He's trying to like add to things, and it's just kind of awkward because he can't really add just because they're just like it's not coming from the same perspective.
Right.
Like Ruslan's clearly arguing against his lifestyle, and he's like, yeah, and like, but it's not really a problem. Like I don't have a problem with it. Like some people like take it to an addictive standpoint, and it's just like you could argue based off the studies, like just on porn, because he relates it to drugs, right? You could argue on the studies, like, is porn bad for you? Is it addictive? Is it only addictive for some people? And there isn't like there isn't just enough evidence right now. Like there's tons of studies. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. Some of them show like it's not good at all, and some of them are like sometimes it's fine. But there's just not enough study on it because it is such a new thing, and it also is taboo. So it's kind of hard to argue. So most of the time people talk about it, it's mostly just anecdotal things like this around pornography.
Oh, you already said it.
Yeah.
Probably not going to bleep it either. We're just as inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely like, he's about to go in. He's going to make
the gospel.
A conservative Christian, but still being about all these other things that seem incongruent. Have you guys ever genuinely considered like trying Jesus, repenting of your sin, and really applying God's wisdom? Like genuinely, like it seems like we've tried all these other things. We've tried doing it our own way. We're trying all this ideology, trying all these. Where's the line? And have we genuinely ever looked at the scriptures and considered that maybe Jesus is who he says he is? Maybe he is God. Maybe he's not a liar. Maybe he's not a lunatic. Maybe he's not a good prophet. And genuinely repented of our ways and tried it God's way.
I 1,000% believe in God and Jesus and know all of that.
That wasn't what I asked.
But you.
Dude, like half of them are like, this guy's stupid. Like they're just like shaking their heads, and then she's like, I already knew that.
She's like, I know all that ish.
Yeah.
She's like, I know that. I love Jesus and God and all that ish. Like, well,
that's all funny.
I hope it's true that her heart is like her idea of God that she loves, but I hope that her understanding and revelation of who God is grows, and she still loves that truer picture. That because we're all in process. We don't know what God's doing in her life and where she's going, so we don't want to just like poop on her process and be like, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, God could really be moving in her life.
Yeah.
And she could be in deep sanctification. Who knows in 3 years where she could be at, and maybe is totally repentant, And so when we encounter people like this, we don't want to just judge them for where they are now, but we want to hear what they're going through, love them with the gospel, and like Ruslan's doing, not shirking away from it, but bringing up the gospel and causing them to have little pebbles in their shoes, something to think of. Greg Kokel's like example there, but we don't know where this girl's going to go and what journey or what place in her journey she's at, and like I really believe that in time that she could it's possible she could be a Christian and like look back and like, man, like God was working, but I didn't have all the T's dot or
absolutely
T's crossed and I's dotted.
But you don't understand my point of view.
I do understand
I don't
your
pray
point
every
of view.
day and night. You're acting like I don't have a Bible.
Christy, you've proven
Oh, these microphones are exploding.
your point
You
is
just
to be
sound
very
like a little bit
incoherent.
nuts.
I asked you a genuine question.
My answer is yes to your question.
So you've repented of your sins, you've placed your faith in Jesus, you've gone to church, you've lived your life with God's wisdom.
1,000%.
You
Yeah, that's
can't
what I'm
do
doing.
what you're doing and then also
That's
say,
your opinion.
It's not my
Are you
opinion.
God?
It's written.
Are you God?
It's written
Is
in
that
the
what you know?
Bible.
Girl
No,
is
but I'm
also
not
not a
God.
Christian.
Yeah, I
Let's say
I don't know who that blonde girl next to Ruslan is.
I don't know who it is. Yeah.
But she's like, you can't live that lifestyle and be that. She's like, are you God? It's like, what? Because people do that. Like,
no, but I read what he said.
Only God can judge me. It's like, well, they're about to say something that's hilarious. I want to talk about.
It's not my fault that Eve ate the apple.
What are you talking about? It's literally
He was the first person who sinned. God wanted us to all be naked and free.
Can we
It's
get
not my fault that Eve ate the
Would that
apple.
be okay?
You keep repeating
Ryan?
the same thing.
You keep thinking you know God's opinion, and you don't.
My thoughts on
God gives us the Bible so that
Wait.
Oh.
I live in the ocean of.
God gives us the Bible. I heard someone say God gives us the Bible. Maybe she is a Christian. Who knows? But she just said you don't know God's opinion, but we can know God's opinion.
Yeah.
We can. It's in the Word. This is why we need to be in the Bible so we know what God thinks of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, let's get back into it.
Like, what would happen if all of society actually implemented the wisdom of God? Like, genuine question. If people waited until marriage to get married, wait until marriage to have sex, if people didn't go and sleep around and have one night stands.
I think people would be way more fulfilled than they are now. And I think what we see in society, specifically like with our generation, is a lot of people try and fill these voids that they have with so many other destructive things that leads them down a path of further destructiveness. They're not happy, and they keep doing like worse things to kind of fill that void.
The way I can summarize this entire conversation, which I believe is...
So that's about maybe the end of the video.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was Ruslan on the Whatever podcast. I think doing a great job representing the gospel, challenging people, being respectful and showing them integrity while disagreeing with them and knowing that he disagrees. But a lot of Christians would say, oh, Christians shouldn't go in there. He shouldn't do that. This is bad. You're going to cause your followers to listen to this podcast and go look up those people, you know, which don't watch Korn.
Right.
Just don't do that. If it's a problem for you, if this is a temptation of yours, don't watch the episode and don't look those people up.
Yeah.
Maybe don't listen. Maybe don't listen to this.
I think it just shows that, like you said, like we're right. Like, it is good that this happened. Like, that these people get to hear this. This podcast is huge, and you're gonna have a whole bunch of people, maybe ex-Christians, maybe people who've never heard the gospel before, who get to hear the gospel now. And like, Jesus would have done the same thing.
Yeah, and
you know
it's more. It's more than just those few people at the table.
Yeah.
Like you said, millions of people are gonna watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, probably. I don't know, but yeah, most likely.
I think millions of people watch.
Who knows? They probably do.
I think they have 4 million subs, right? How many views does it have right now? It says, I can't read that.
Yeah, I can't read either.
A lot. Oh, that's the reason.
Either way, yeah. I would love to listen to the whole episode, but we couldn't do like a reaction on the whole thing.
4 hour.
The 4 hours reaction, yeah. Just because it's such an awkward dynamic, you know, of like people who make Korn, and then other people who I don't know if it's the 3 of them or the 2 of them or whatever, but basically Ruslan for sure, who are like, your lifestyle is directly against like my worldview, and you should stop.
Yeah.
And you're like, he's literally saying everything you do is the problem with everything in our world.
Yeah.
That's literally what he's saying. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And the thing is, you gotta give him respect though for going there and not folding and not saying like, I don't know, maybe God is okay with it, maybe this. It's like, but also something I don't know if they talked about in the podcast because like I said, I didn't finish it. But you gotta think about also Korn fuels so much human trafficking. True. Like true. So if you can't be like engaged in this lifestyle and then say, oh, we have to fight for the freedoms of these people. It's like, well, the industry you're in is directly affecting that. Yeah. Which I would wonder if they got into it. I'm not gonna listen to find out. But yeah, question for you. And I think it's pretty clear based on what you've said already.
Is lusting if you're not married?
It is a sin. Questions if it's adultery. Yeah. Do you think if you were put in the same position, if you were invited on a radio show, on a podcast similar to that you would go? And do you think it's okay for Christians to intentionally go to those places to engage in those conversations?
I would. If I felt well enough equipped that I wouldn't misrepresent the gospel, and I would also look up the format, like who I'm talking to, right? How divisive it is. If I was gonna go talk to somebody like Destiny or something, who's like a commentator, he's an atheist. He is very logical, but he speaks over people a lot and makes fun of them and is very rude. I don't know if I would talk to him.
Because you wouldn't be able to get through to him.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to get through to him, but I just don't think it would be a very productive conversation either. I think when professionals talk to him, like he had a debate with Trent Horn on abortion. It was great because Trent's a professional. I'm not a professional, right? So if I was going to go and talk to another layperson or just like an individual about Korn and stuff like that, or about something else, totally would do it. I've been on other podcasts, like I would totally do it. Yeah, but I just do my research first. Yeah. Because I feel equipped to do it. If someone didn't feel equipped, I would say, as long as you're not doing it like out of fear, like if you're genuinely just like, I just don't know enough about the subject, I don't feel good about speaking publicly or confident maybe, unless the Lord's like, hey, just like Moses, I'll give you the confidence to speak to Pharaoh, right? I'll give you the confidence to go on this podcast and speak for me. Like that could totally happen too. Then awesome.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, I think, mostly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's okay for Christians to go on these platforms. Honestly, I think it's probably needed.
Yeah.
Too many times Christians will be like, I'm not going on there, they're sinners, I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to preach the gospel for my channel. But it's like, yo, Jesus hung out with tax collectors and prostitutes. Like,
think about it this way. We're sort of categorizing sin again into like what is worse sin and what's not, which is fine to do because some sin is worse, for sure. Right. But it's like, if your argument is these people sin a lot, why are you going on their show? So like these people make corn, which is a lot of sin. They do it all the time. Like, why are you going on their show? It would be the same argument of like, why would you want a Christian to go on Joe Rogan's podcast? Right. He's a sinner. He's not saved. Like he does sin all the time because he does sin just like Christians too. But like he does sin all the time and he's a sinner. But it's just like a different kind of sin, and you're more comfortable with that for some reason.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, wouldn't you want to be in a place where there's no light and be the light, so people can come to the light? Like Jesus says, it's a right. No one. I'm gonna use the kids song, but I have the light. Hide it under a bushel. No.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let it shine. What's the first part?
I think that's it. Hide it under a bushel. No. I'm going to let it shine.
Yeah, you're supposed to let your light shine. Jesus says, let your light shine before all men, so they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So if you live consistent with the ways of God and you get invited to these spaces, because Ruslan got invited to go there. You know, he wasn't like, hey, can I come? Yeah. He got invited. He got asked on. Or at least that conservative woman to his right, the dark-haired girl, she was going on and got him the hookup to go on as well. So she was already going to go on. She got invited. She's like, hey, I'm going to message Ruslan. He drove 4 hours to go there.
Pretty cool. Which is totally worth it.
Yeah, was on it for 4 hours, drove 4 hours back.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great thing that he did it. And I think Christians who are like, oh, no, it's not good, maybe we need to rethink why we think that.
Yeah.
Are you just never going to talk to a sinner?
Right. Exactly. Like, these conversations are so good to have. Some people don't like it, but I think it's great. I don't see a lot of arguments against it. If you're going to steel man the arguments against this, what do you think they would be? Because I can't even think of like...
I was thinking that people could misunderstand Ephesians, I think 4 or 5, where Jesus says, have nothing to do with the evil deeds of darkness, but even expose them, which we did a podcast on that a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And what all that means. But they would say, oh, have nothing to do with the evil deeds of darkness. So you shouldn't even be talking to those people. And it's like, well, I feel like that's taken a little bit too far.
Yeah, clearly Jesus and the disciples and Paul and everyone like talked to those people.
Yeah. 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 Now... what would be problematic is if a Christian was like, okay, we need to be a light in the darkness, so I'm going to go to a corn studio and talk to them. It's like, well...
Might be problematic, yeah.
Might be problematic.
That would be like kind of like going and evangelizing in like a strip club or something.
I think, yeah, and it depends, because I know like, I know people go on like trips, like mission trips, and maybe the girls will be going into a strip club to talk to the girls.
Yeah.
You know, because there's not guys stripping in there probably. But the guys will wait outside and pray.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's that aspect where it's using wisdom, because certain people can maybe go into certain areas, but I would say as a general rule, as a Christian, you're not going to go into a strip club and preach the gospel. You're going to come out of it, or you can stand outside the doors and talk to people outside the doors.
Right.
But
you're going to try to make it so that you're not going to be tempted to sin.
Right. Yeah. Don't put yourself in a compromising position.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyways, come back next week. We're going to be talking about Christian ChatGPT.
Or maybe in a couple weeks, because we have a guest next week.
Oh, we got a guest next week.
Yeah.
Who's coming on next week?
Next week, I think, is Tate, and we're talking about transgenderism and just gender ideology in general. Week after that, we have another returning guest,
St. John.
Yeah, St. John, and we're talking about politics, some controversy, and going back and forth on that party. And then after that, maybe we'll do Christian ChatGPT. And
here's the thing:
what denomination it is.
We had to find out if ChatGPT itself was affirming of Christianity.
Yeah.
And now we have to find out if Christian ChatGPT, what denomination.
Yeah, so there's 2 ChatGPTs. There's lots of them, but there's a Christian one specifically to answer all your Christian questions.
I was playing around with it today, and I asked, "Is my eternal destiny predestined?"
Don't answer.
I won't tell you.
Don't give it away.
Yeah, I guess you have to come back in about a month or 3 weeks to figure it out.
Yeah. All right, shoots, y'all. Thanks for watching the show. We'll see you next time.
Peace.